becoming a director for a long time. I did have opportunities and always thought, no, I don't want to do that because it's too hard. And maybe I wasn't conscious about it, but one thing I was avoiding was this. Like the challenge and the difficulty that I knew that not only that our students have, but that strong leadership has to facilitate and advance and lead this kind of movement in the field.
Wow, thanks, Alyssa. My name is John Galley. I'm one of the assistant directors at the Cambridge Community Learning Center. We're a pretty big program, so we have assistant directors. Not every program is fortunate to have that, and I've kind of been able to take a little bit more leadership without having a lot of the woes of being the director, so that is a place of privilege in this space, definitely, today. So I want to acknowledge that, but I feel, I'm so glad that there was that pair share and the little mini masterclass, because when we got together to talk, both with Ian and then together as a pair, you know, I definitely hold a lot of imposter syndrome because this is a journey. I'm just willing to try and speak up as much as I can, but we don't have all the answers. I definitely don't have all the answers. I still make mistakes. But I'm learning to use my voice and my privilege to hopefully affect positive change.
Okay, so while you're listening to the panelists, just think about this at the simultaneously. What equity detours they identified in their programs and what equity detours you might identify in your own programs. Just keep that in mind as you're listening. So we'll start off with the first question. So what equity detours have you seen arise in your programs? Lisa, John?
Yep.
Close the door.
What do you prefer? Okay.
All right. So I would say so at first I was getting caught up in the masterclass definitions, and Ian said, don't do that, just talk about your experience. I thought, okay. So I would say definitely in the first year, the detour would have been not doing anything. Like knowing that there was an issue, being aware, and actually I can't say I didn't do anything. I sent a few people to the UPD workshop, but I wasn't really thinking about what am I going to do. You know, I was sort of checking a box. And when they came back, my staff, they said, nope, no, this isn't just a box, you really have to go. And so then the next detour I had was fear of doing the wrong thing and being vulnerable and having to face the things that I had sort of either consciously or unconsciously been afraid of. I'm conflict averse, just always worried about doing the wrong thing. So that's a detour, and I realized that. I realized all of this big time in taking the position I had. And so I would say another detour, I'm just gonna throw a bunch out there, is making assumptions, like making assumptions about what people know and care about, making assumptions about what they can and can't do, making assumptions about what I can and cannot do. That luckily they're just detours, just takes a little longer to get there. And I definitely, as Jenny was talking, really hit me the pacing for privilege. I had been understanding it in a different way and realized like once I was embracing like, okay, I'm jumping in now to equity with my team, and we have people who are doing it. We were like, oh, but not everybody's taking the training, and we think people are going to be very uncomfortable, and I'm very uncomfortable thinking about how uncomfortable they are or will be or possibly might be. So let's wait for that. So that is a little bit of a detour that we're on now, because I'm waiting for them to go through the training rather than myself saying, now I won't do this, but you know, I'm not going to wait anymore, but rather saying, this is what we're doing, this is what we're about, and here are some reasons why. And already I fear saying it wrong and people taking it the wrong way, whatever that is, but I feel committed to doing it. those are a few detours. I get lost all the time.
Right. Well, hey, I'm right there with you, or without you, I guess you should say.
Yeah.
So, when I think about the questions and the times I've stepped in it and really thought I've been doing the right thing, or we as a program have pushed things through that we really think is in the best interest of our learners, the sort of common theme that I come up against is valuing shiny new things or valuing discrete progress you can see and touch and name versus building relationships. That is often missed, and I can say from my own experience, way back in the day when we were in charge of responding to so many metrics that were based on measurements of discrete things that didn't really also value relationships, I think that led us to not speak up enough about just being complicit and following along with those things that created things like very strict attendance policy culture, which really we had to keep our funding going, and we highly valued people who were able to show up and discarded folks that weren't able to do it, rather than taking the time to spend on building relationships, creating that staff structure and ability to have time to do that, to really be able to listen to the struggles and barriers our students had, and to be able to take the time to support them and to be with them as we work together to overcome them. We also had a few things that looked really great on the outside, like we had a student advisory council, which we went around and asked students to be participants in it. We never asked the lower level students to be participating in it, the folks that struggle with language. And that's something I've learned recently, to just not to let that be a barrier for yourself to get input, and to give those students an opportunity to participate. Make that structure and those supports so everyone really can participate in that. Quite often that group which gave recommendations or ideas about things the program could do better, the staff would have veto power and would say, that's too difficult. We don't have the money for that. We can't do that. It's too messy. And that shut down so many strong voices that it's disappointing to reflect on now that I didn't speak up more strongly at the time, aside from just opposing the other staff members individually. Something Felipe referenced, I've definitely been complicit in, which was when he first started, he's actually in a position that I formerly occupied, which was a satellite site manager. So I was actually very separate from the main site, which is a very much larger site. But I was present in the conversations and staff discussions. I overheard quite often a lot of staff saying, no, we don't do that way here. You got to follow, everyone's doing it the same way. You have to do it this way. We trained you how to do this. And I didn't speak up enough. So that's on me. And I apologize to him every time I get. And I was really pushing for him to be honest and vulnerable today about that, because I've seen that. And I do see how the work through this series and through our own organizational work on ADEI has given him renewed vigor to his voice. He had a voice, then it kind of got squashed. But it was a full-time job in a field he loved. He wasn't going to abandon that easily. But he kind of just lived with that weathering every week and every month and every year. And it's been really nice to hear how he feels a lot more positive, has a lot more energy to raise his voice. And there's a lot more reception in the program based on the staff and students that we've brought along the way. So.
Well, okay. There's no water in my eyes. Just tired. So I think on this one particularly, I think you already kind of shared this, but we can lead into this question a little bit. How did you know it was an equity detour? I think in your responses, I think you seem like your intuition consistently was letting you know it may not be the course you wanted to go down, but you were brave enough and courageous to go down it. But is there anything else that, or anyone else that also influenced that you may help you identify that was an equity detour?
I think once you start doing the work, you do have, well, for me, you can't stop thinking. So there are lots of decisions that we make as directors or coordinators or teachers every day, right? But once you start looking through an equity lens, even when you make a decision, for me, I second guests, myself all the time. And so one situation I'd love to share is what I call strong black woman. And there was, we had a situation in our basic classroom. Well, I'll back up. So our program has been predominantly Spanish-speaking, ESOL background. We have ESOL classes, predominantly Spanish-speaking. But recently we have an influx of Haitian immigrants. And we have been purposely trying to diversify the student body and prioritizing entry into the program of people who do not speak Spanish, partly so that Spanish speakers will speak English to somebody else who doesn't speak Spanish. So we have some Haitian students in a basic classroom, and the teacher in that classroom speaks Spanish. And so when the Spanish-speaking students had a question, they might ask him in Spanish, he might respond in Spanish. And the one Haitian student in particular, this woman, was becoming frustrated, and she would speak up and speak loudly, and it happened a number of times, and she didn't want there to be Spanish speaking, and in one point of frustration she said something about the Dominican students, and so the situation was brought to me, and the way it was portrayed to me was that the student was disruptive and disrespectful to the teacher. And so I thought I was listening to everybody, and the teachers were upset. Like this woman really upset them. And so me, I don't like conflict. I'm like, okay, we'll change her class, move her to a different level. Maybe we'll, she doesn't get along with other students, maybe we'll put her in a remote class. And I just really thank goodness that she came to me and she said, I don't think this is fair, you know. And she actually was in the wrong class because her English was very good for basic. And I just took it home with me. And I had to go to another training, which was actually a board training, but with also an inclusiveness lens. And the woman who was training us that night was a DEI officer, and she was introducing herself, and she introduced herself as a strong black woman and talked about how in the world, strong black women are underappreciated and often silenced. And I was like, oh my God, I have silenced a strong black woman, you know? And so I honestly, I almost couldn't sleep that night. And I went back to work the next day, and I pulled together the staff, and I said, are we afraid of strong black women? Because
Be direct.
I'm worried. And so I just told them the whole same story like I told you, and the teachers, who were white teachers and young, and said, oh my God, are we racist? We didn't mean, you know, so it was not an elegant moment. It was not like all our great training, but it was, you know, we try. And so we stopped, we thought again, and someone who said, I absolutely can't work with this woman, said, please let me have her in my class, I want to try. And so our solution for her actually didn't change very much, but the way that we thought about her and the way that we thought about the situation really changed. And so I get very excited every time. We haven't had another situation like that since, but it's such a hallmark. It's a beacon for me, for everyone who comes through the door, and for everyone who was on our team. Like, I know they have it, and they try just a little bit differently now.
Thank you, Lisa. Can you give it up for strong black women?
Yeah. Being direct often is the best way. Same question?
You don't have to look at this.
It's like we can.
You know when you become
Let's look at John.
I wasn't sure.
Are we good, John?
you become a participant, or like, I need to stand up.
Go with the flow.
Let's go to the next question. So what impact do you think these equity detours have had on staff, students, and program outcomes?
Yeah, that word belonging is a real important one for us this year at the CLC in Cambridge. And really for me, my earlier example of just really making sure everyone is along for the ride, not just those who are privileged to use their voice or be in a space to use their voice, is really part of that. And we're really finding some exciting ways that the students are able all to contribute. And the students leading their peers to participate. It's not the staff necessarily, but finding those student leaders. So just really creating that sense of belonging and seeing that sense of belonging is the win there, and having that feedback from students. Also being able to hear both the positives and negatives from folks who we haven't asked, how's it going before, in an organized way. Taking the time to do that is really helpful with the community. I feel like this is we're over the past year and a half to 2 years, we're at the point where we're like someone said, I don't know if it was in this session or early session, we have our value statements, we have our mission statement, and the staff sort of know it, they get their orientation, but I feel like the students are able to be invited in now, and we're not using the exact same language. We need to work on that to really invite them in further. But I feel like there's more of a community in the center beyond just the classroom. I think we've always done a pretty decent job in the classroom. Some wins, some losses, but for the most part, classrooms are really a tight-knit, supportive group. But going beyond that, we're doing a much better job, and seeing the benefits of people from the evening program helping students in the morning program they'd never have a relationship with to put on an event. And it's incredible. It's really incredible. I don't even know if that was the answer to the question.
I know, I was like, what's the question again?
Sorry.
Equity detours.
Just
I
coming
think
out.
you're saying it. I think we don't have to. I think even your the point that you made about Felipe, right, and the idea of like, and I think in your answer, Alyssa, in regards to the strong black woman and that idea and that concept, I think you both addressed it there. I think Felipe, when you talk about the vigor and invigoration and the possibilities that have opened up for him to lead into this ADI work, and for someone to like wanting to have and be in education and thinking that he may have to sacrifice a big part of his identity,
Yes.
a big part of his vision, and being able to be like close to his dream, but not be able to show up in his dream the way that he wanted to. I think I can see those impacts. And so, yeah, I think we've answered that and covered that. And Alyssa, when you talk about the strong black woman and you bring it to your entire staff and them all having like, okay, aha moment and understanding how do we not tone police our students, particularly the black women students that we may have and staff as well. So I think we're there. Let's keep going. And I want to get some questions from the audience. The audience, okay. All the folks
The
here,
people.
as well as have some time for everyone here to actually spend some time thinking about their equity detours that they may be coming up with. And I appreciate how you're breaking from the idea of like just those terms that we had here, and really just allowing you to let them to show up in however they show up in your program, and then addressing them as such. So that's great. So how are you addressing these equity detours? We've already shared some, but
Yeah.
share a few more with us.
I can say a few things. So slowing things down always helps, and I mean we've definitely increased me as a leader talking about my own time I spent on reflection, and it's a pre, during, and post kind of activity. It's not just when you're done, but noticing whose voices aren't included or aren't able to be included because we're not finding the right way to get that inclusion. Even though we think we're experts, we're a big diverse organization. We teach English. We have all 70 plus cultures and languages represented. We can always do better. And I'm living proof that as someone in the same center for 30 years, just learning now more successful ways to do that. Not to say I was dabbling before, but really putting a lot of thought and reflection onto who's not in the room. We actually have from our colleagues in the community engagement team, whose mission is a lot larger than just adults and adult education, like a little laminated card we can have like with 4 target questions we keep in front of us, some of us, like who's not in the space? How can we get them in the space? And not just as being in the table, but even just inviting their voice to join the table. So.
I love that.
In my program, we're big on saying, we know what we're doing next year now. Because it seems hard to tackle things we see in the moment. But I think, like John said, we are doing better about thinking about who's not in the room. So I'd already talked about our Haitian students, and we anticipate actually that the program is going to do a flip, and we might be predominantly Haitian as soon as next year. And so we're like, we, not myself personally, but a lot of our staff have a lot of expertise in different cultures of South America and the Caribbean, but not a lot about Haitian culture. So we have reached out to our group of students and leaders to say, what can we do? We want to do a good job, and we want you to help us. We want you to be part of us. And so we're sort of in that process where the leaders created a survey. We've just started talking and building those relationships and thinking about how to move forward. But that's kind of our plan for everything, like to involve the students always in what are we planning as much as we can, and also to get better about maybe being a little more systematic about giving people the tools. So I don't know if this was one of the detours, but a challenging situation that definitely I have created sometimes is putting or asking someone to take a position and not giving them adequate training or background for the position, and not setting them up for success. And this isn't just limited to any staff of color, but in general in adult ed, because that's how I learned. I was thrown in, so that was my model. And now I realize that's not a recipe for success. And so we're getting better. Just everything we try to do better. We just try to look at everything a lot more critically, and be open to the feedback when it's not done in a supportive way.
Can I just mention one other thing, because it just came to mind as you were
Yeah.
talking. One of the things that we pivoted, and I'm sure a lot of programs saw develop over COVID, was using electronic digital tools because we couldn't be in the same physical space for so long. And we have a large program, so we saw this huge benefit. Google Forms are a great way to get input. We can do this, we can do registration, we can do all these great things we had never actually taken the space to think about in such a large program that was all in person before COVID. But I feel like some staff have taken that as their tunnel vision now. And whenever they want to get input on something, they're sending out a Google form and this is what the students say. Here are the pie charts, here are the tables. But some of the questions they're asking are really nuanced. You need to have the in-person relationship to get that authentic feedback that our advisors are giving in the conversation, but it's not valued as much as those metrics. So just be careful about the time you use with digital tools, because they can really be a huge detour. You can have huge numbers, but they're not really representing everybody.
They're not speaking in our language.
Yeah.
They're not speaking our language.
And even if it's translated,
Right.
the skill level and the humanness of a conversation versus responding in a little bubble or a square is completely different.
And it will detail you.
We talk a
Make
lot.
you turn it right off.
Yeah.
We talk a lot at UPD in measurement conversations about triangulating with multiple types of information. Sometimes we say multiple types of data, but we mean information. Big surveys, they can actually be really helpful, but they're not going to get you the data about the one student who's miserable because the teacher's explaining things in another language that student also doesn't know, right? You need to think about, and as all of you are going through in these equity detour works, this is just the word triangulation. It's a triangle, right? It's like at least 3 different points of information that you can then bring and discuss. And that is a habit of bringing that into decision making that is exactly what you're talking about, right? It's not that they can't do those surveys and use that data. And if you're getting good
Right.
response rates, like powerful. But by itself only gives you
Yeah.
one perspective.
We did a survey for the Haitian
Was it a Google
student.
form? No, I'm teasing.
Yeah, it was totally a Google form. But before we sent it out, I asked one student who was there on a Saturday. We have a computer class on a Saturday, and I have a relationship with the student. I said, Evans, will you look at the questions before I send this out to everyone? And he looked at them and he said, yeah, they're fine questions, but it's bad. Like, it's bad here. I came here like all the way from Chile, and I'm not sure I should have. You know, so the questions didn't get at how bad it was. And I didn't even think to ask him, like, what question would get at that? Because no question on a Google form is going to get at that. But I'm like, oh my God, wait till we get this group together, right? And he was kind of like, please hurry, you know. Wow. So, and of course we haven't yet, because everything got to be in quadrant 2.
What is it like that? Quadrant 2 program or living?
Living here, yeah. No, not the pro. He's a great proponent of the program. I feel confident about that. Yeah.
Okay, so we have one last question, then we want to transition a little bit. So what advice might you give to those who are experiencing equity detours? Some of them have just heard about equity detours today. They're in their first day. So what advice would you have? And those that have been experiencing it and knew about it even before today?
Okay. I could just briefly stay reflective, like I mentioned. Don't think you're ever better than that, or you can cut that out of your daily routine or your weekly routine. Pause as much as you can. That could be in a classroom, a meeting, talking to a student. Really take the time to listen to that student. Create space to question. We don't have the answers as leaders, and we can't expect all of our staff or even students, but you can create that space for them to raise questions and not without judgment. And then, like I said before, take the time to build relationships with your staff, with your students, with your funders, all across the board. But the students' stories are going to really be the most impactful, because I think we haven't done a good job with that in the past as leaders.
And I would say, make discomfort your friend, and don't give up.
Keep on.
Thank you so much.
Nice job. Nice job. Yeah, the chair.
Okay, so stop and jot. We're going to turn and if your partner's still, I think a few folks, if your partner's still in the room or find someone new, consider how equity detours may impact your efforts in addressing ADI work in your program. So where might there be equity detours in your program?
Are we gonna figure it out now?
Yes.
Give time for.
Give some time, stop and jot. So I'm gonna give you like 2 minutes just to kind of
yes,
write down,
2:20.
think about it, take some deep breaths, and then we'll move into what might be ways to address them or resolve them. If you have a few ways, you don't need to have this fully. You might have this might come out of the conversation or sharing this with your partner. Just take 2 minutes to just think about where might there be equity detours in your program.
Are we partner sharing or?
You're just taking some personal time right now to reflect on that question.
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thanks for being the.
Jenny, should we give you these back now so that?
Okay.